It's Christmas time, people are getting gift cards for Steam, it's almost the end of the year, so you know what that means. It is, once again, Steam winter sale time. In my opinion, one of the best sales Steam does every year. It's probably that and spring. Those two are consistently my favorite sales, and ones I buy a lot of my games during, especially because the winter sale sees some of the steepest discounts we see all year. Even decently new games are seeing pretty heavy discounts. Black Ops 6 is discounted 25% or 15% off, something like that. Pretty much makes it the same price as a normal last generation game, but it doesn't matter, it's a sale's a sale. So let's jump right into this with number 5. I've used this game multiple times, but it continues to be an amazing deal and just continues to perform amazing on the Steam Deck. The Borderlands series, the entire thing, runs phenomenally on Steam Deck, the ROG Ally, and the Legion Go, and all other PC handhelds out there. And it just is amazing to be able to play some of the best games from last and generations prior, that it's just always a fun experience. And a lot of these games can be enjoyed offline, so you don't need an internet connection. So whenever you are on the train, bus, car trip, Uber, anything like that, you can keep playing your game even well after you've been disconnected from the internet, which is something that honestly doesn't happen enough. Entirely single-player games cannot be played due to requiring some sort of server authentication or just connecting to online services that entirely prevents you from playing them without an internet connection, even though the game offers no online services. And the Borderlands franchise has consistently been able to maintain offline play without requiring you to connect to a server at any point. So for that, I think it makes a solid number 5, especially if you're playing these on mobile devices. The next game we're going to be discussing is in a similar vein. Persona 5 is one of my favorite games I've ever played, and is on sale for $27, and it's genuinely one of the best JRPG experiences you can ever have. I'm not going to delve too deeply into the overall story of the game because I genuinely feel like you should experience it for yourself without any spoilers. The game runs really well on pretty much all platforms out there: Steam Deck, Legion Go, Ally X, everything. On top of that, it runs it at a pretty decently high FPS, being able to maintain anywhere between 50 to 60 FPS depending on what settings you're running. But that is to be expected when this game originally came out all the way back in like 2017, 2016, and it came out on the original PS3 on top of the PS4, so it's not exactly a demanding game. But I will always be recommending Persona 5 because it is consistently one of my favorite and highest rated games of all time, not just in JRPGs, but in every other category. Persona 5 is one of the best games out there, and I would highly recommend anybody give it a shot. For the next game we're going to be discussing, it's a bit of a tumultuous game. You know, it has a bit of a reputation, a bit of a history behind it, especially if you have problems with its original writer. Hogwarts Legacy is a visually stunning game and runs shockingly well on low-end hardware. For Christ's sake, they got it running on the Switch natively, no streaming. It runs on the Switch without any assistance, and it's honestly very impressive. So you truly have your choice in how you want to play it. And I think it makes the most sense on maybe a device like the ROG Ally X or the Legion Go, just due to the high performance, so you can enjoy a little bit higher details. But overall, it's a great game. It is visually impressive. It has some of the best magic mechanics we've seen in all Harry Potter games, in fact, because the only ones I've played were on the GameCube, so it's been like a decade since I've played any actual Harry Potter game, and Hogwarts Legacy is just one of the best games, you know, I've played in the last couple years. And you can get all of that amazing visual fidelity and just incredibly fun and satisfying combat for $15, which honestly is a pretty decent price. Just controversy withstanding, if you're okay making the sacrifice in terms of visual fidelity and playing it on something like the Steam Deck, $15 is pretty easy of a choice to pick up. Our next game we're going to be discussing is Final Fantasy XVI. Now, this game has been on PC for a while, but it has finally made the transition to Steam. It was initially exclusive to the Epic Game Store for a bit, but it eventually, came off that and now is available on Steam and all your other platforms available. So that's pretty nice. And it's a game that I recently picked up, so I haven't finished it yet. But the real-time action combat that is not necessarily typical of Final Fantasy that a lot of, long-standing fans are used to, is just really fun. I love the live action combat opposed to the more standard turn-based stuff you might find, or the more MMO style stuff you might find on Final Fantasy XIV. Something important to bear in mind with Final Fantasy XVI, it is the most expensive game on this list at $37.49. So if you got a $60 or $50 Steam gift card, like most kids would be getting in their stockings or something like that, it would suck up a pretty decently sized portion of that gift card. And something you could also consider is getting multiple games with that kind of money. When I was a kid, I was trying to maximize enjoyment to money ratios. So I would pick up the entire Borderlands, collection instead of each individual game, because the collection would be on sale for like $10, and then you can pick up 4 other games with that kind of extra money saved. And included in that Borderlands collection is the first game, the second game, and sometimes you can see a version with, all mainline titles, but it's kind of iffy with that. But it's generally just maximizing your budget, and I would say sacrificing a decent portion of it to Final Fantasy XVI, while isn't advised, I do think it's an incredibly fun game from the short time I have experienced it, and I would highly recommend it to any fan of games like Dark Souls, Elden Ring. If you want something faster paced, but just a little bit more different, think of Life of P, It's not exactly the same thing by any means, but it's just a little bit different, and it feels amazing because of that. Before we jump into the last game we are going to be discussing in this video, there's a couple honorable mentions. Number 1, Jedi Fallen Order, and it's an incredibly fun game. I've put it on lists in the past, so I didn't feel necessary to bring it up this time, but for the honorable mention's sake, it just determined to be on this list because it is just such an amazing deal, the steepest sale I've ever seen on it. You can pick it up for $4.99. That is an incredible, just single-player experience with some of the best lightsaber combat. I personally prefer Jedi Fallen Order over Jedi Survivor, so if you're looking for a way into the Star Wars games as a franchise, and if you've played Jedi Outlaws, you can find a pretty nice home and enjoyable experience with Jedi Fallen Order. The other honorable mention on this list is going to be Baldur's Gate 3, which has been removed off this list mainly because of how expensive it is. It hasn't received steep discounts, really, only ever seeing at best 25% off, and this time around being only 20% off for a final total of $47.99. So it's not the best deal out there, but it is an incredibly fun game and has been winning so many awards the last couple years for how amazing it is. And it's just an overall very fun experience. If you love D&D, you love those fantasy worlds and some turn-based combat, I would highly recommend you check this game out. Runs pretty well on all the major handhelds out there, but honestly, it's not as good as I would have hoped in terms of performance, but for what it's worth, it runs pretty well, and I can't really complain about it. Now, moving on to the last game on this list. Number 1 is Helldivers 2. I've been pretty slow to get on Helldivers. It is an incredibly fun game, third-person action shooter, some of the most intense combat I've ever played in a game, and just a lot of fun to sit down and play with your friends or even as a solo person. I still play a lot of Destiny 2, and Helldivers 2 captures a very similar feeling inside, especially as a solo player predominantly. Playing a game like Helldivers 2 usually would be pretty boring. I played games like Outriders, if anybody remembers that game, predominantly by myself, and it wasn't really designed that way, and it showed. Helldivers 2, though, on the other hand, while can be played multiplayer, the single-player experience isn't diminished because of that, and it runs remarkably well on devices like the Steam Deck, RG Ally X, and things like even the Pocket Go. So for that purpose, I think it makes it amazing number one, especially considering it is a great deal, especially at the price point $31.99, which seriously is a pretty good price point. It's not a very steep sale, it's only $8 off, but honestly, that's good enough for me to fit it into a certain budget within I could receive it in a gift card. So for all you guys out there, I hope you have a Merry Christmas, enjoy your holidays, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, all the other social media garbage down there. And last but not least, have a wonderful day.